morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on episode 97 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I am Billy Bob. On the left coast, I've got our normal, regular panel, Ben Toth from Page Hungry, Carlo Parcelli from Washington, D.C. Leo Zhao is our special guest coming from Berlin, Germany. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Ian Cummer is supposed to be joining us shortly.
He's in a taxi. Riding a cab in Moscow, and yeah, I just want to say 3 episodes to 100. I mean, congrats, guys. That's close to a big milestone.
It seems like Leo's done at least half of them. So thanks Leo for being a regular guest, and then for you guys for sticking with us for 100 episodes, almost 100 episodes. That will be a great milestone. But today we are talking about how everything is backfired. So this is the macro picture where the efforts of Western imperialism to maintain their hegemony have not gone so well, and so all of their plans to turn the ruble to rubble, to defeat Russia, to regime change Russia, to balkanize Russia, have backfired tremendously. And all the governments responsible for these policies are being thrown out of office by the citizens of the West. So that's what we're referring to when we talk about how everything is backfired. And then the other little item we were going to discuss was the Crowdstroke.
Everybody thought it was a typo. Sorry, my mistake. It is CrowdStrike, but I just thought it was funny because, it seems the Western IT system has suffered a stroke, while both Russia and I've seen SCMP from China saying we've been resilient because we have, software independence, as in digital Westphalia. We have digital sovereignty. And what the West suffered in this CrowdStrike thing. Do you want me to talk about it, or do you want to?
Well, I was just going to say, it's not a typo. It is a play on words. So CrowdStrike caused a collective stroke, in the West. Like Ben was saying, 1,400 flights got canceled. It was a glitch within the Western infrastructure IT network, and it did cause a lot of problems. And it was related to CrowdStrike's security update. But yeah, like Ben was saying, it didn't really affect China too much. It was mostly affecting the West. But so I was just laying out. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Also, if you're watching on just a consumer PC, you're likely not affected because CrowdStrike is mostly, corporate, as in enterprise level cloud IT security platform, which had a brand new update this morning or something, and it caused this BSOD, the blue screen of death plague, like everywhere. Airports stunned, medicine, broadcast. I think Sky News is still offline. Companies, banking sectors have been affected, and the way out of it, it seems to be days to weeks to maybe even months, depending on the intricacy of the software environment. But yeah, I just woke up to a digital Armageddon pretty much exclusively in the West. So that's the CrowdStrike part of it. There's still headlines coming in. People stuck at airports without the ability to pay. Go ahead.
Well, not being that familiar with the story and waking up to it, and you telling me about it. How likely is it that they're going to very quickly blame China or Russia for this? Or have they already started? Or have they already said that it's not China or Russia?
I was looking. The French, intelligence services said it's unlikely a cyber attack. That's the one thing I found. So they haven't preemptively blamed anyone for this, although it would be convenient after we've heard that the Trump assassination plot was obviously a threat from Iran. For some fucking reason, the US intelligence services have later claimed, even though it's not related to this attack. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't seen anything as of this morning.
So, Iran was definitely involved. They had recruited, what's that guy's name? Matthew something?
That's the Crooks. Crooks. I remember the Crooks thing. His name is Crooks, right?
He had 3 names. He came out with 3 names, and I forget exactly what they are. But
the assassin, Matthew something Crooks, right?
Right. Yeah, Crooks.
No, so the idea that Iran is behind that is strange.
Yeah.
But do we want to dwell on and focus on how everything is backfired and the way in which the Western strategy to maintain their global hegemony has backfired? I
Sure,
mean,
we can maybe begin by making a brief list of everything that has backfired.
Take it away, Leo.
Russian collapse has backfired. Economic war on China has backfired. Their attempt to, in Syria has been backfiring. The Middle East, Israel is absolutely on its last little legs of legitimacy.
There's news there too. Let me get back to that.
Legitimacy in the world, in the eyes of the world. They're so desperate. They're trying Tibet again. Just made some legislation to make Tibet a independent country. How's that going to go? I mean, Tibet is prosperous, and people, for the first time in hundreds of years, are living good lives, and just to search for videos.
Or Xizang, as it should be known, as the Chinese know it, I guess. It's just no longer Tibet. That's the colonial name. Add to that, Trump is alive, and Biden faces a coup from the Democrats is what it looks like this morning. You're going to be forcibly COVIDed out or something. It's just many, many fronts.
A lot of discussion that Biden will step down this weekend, that this is the weekend that they're going to either go with Kamala or have a process to determine who else will be on the ballot.
Blue screen mayhem is a good opportunity to sneak in some news like that.
That you could have a point there, Ben. That could be an opportunistic pretext to do that. But my thoughts as Leo was going through this laundry list, what I was thinking is that the Western ruling class, the oligarchs, the capitalist class, the wealthy elites must understand that all of the options that they have involve asking the citizens in the West to sacrifice, right? So they understand that there's going to be some turmoil and unhappiness with the citizenry in the West as this continues to unfold, and they understand that they have to, they're going to bring pain to the West, and so their challenge is to spin that pain and to make the West, blame Russia for it or China for it, and not blame the people that are actually causing it. And they're more than happy, right? They don't care. They don't care about causing pain and sacrifice for the West, other than they have to worry about, an uprising, right? And losing legitimacy and getting the people so angry that they demand a legitimate socialist kind of style revolution. But people in the West are so brainwashed, for lack of a better term, that just seems like a remote possibility. And so instead of, they don't really have to worry about that. They're just going to bring the pain and then continue this divisive, fractionalization, for lack of a better term, of the masses, and they can turn on each other. Meanwhile, the elites themselves aren't really going to be feeling any of the pain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
they never do. Yeah.
Well, if you listen to the any of the speeches from the RNC convention, you would realize that the people that are causing the pain, not only in the United States, but all over Europe, are the immigrants.
Yeah.
And they're also responsible for all the murders in the United States, apparently, if you listen to that tone.
And Carlo, you probably enjoyed that they brought in Hulk Hogan. Like, idiocracy is becoming closer and closer.
I love those comparisons to Camacho.
Let me
Idiocracy.
So let me respond. So no, you have identified an absolute actual narrative and one of the, divisive ways, but there's also a whole class of liberals who are blaming conservatives and Trump supporters for all the pain. So this is what I'm saying. They're going to fractionalize the citizenry along these various lines, along these various axes, and none of these axes are the actual axes that exist, which is class and fundamental, oppositional class interests.
No, if you listen to those speeches, They were just full of lies about how Trump had saved the economy in his first 4 years. They were just blatant lies. And
But
then you got this
if you listen to
asshole.
Biden, you hear the same thing. It's just lies. It's nothing but lies about how bad Trump is and about how good Biden has been.
But then you got this guy, you know, the JD Vance.
Yeah.
And it was just blowhard bullshit. And I couldn't even hear it because Rosalie had so many facts to counter him and couldn't keep her mouth shut about it. She talked over him almost the whole time because everything he said was a lie. And she knows the context in which he's lying.
It would be so great to replace you with Rosalie, if only.
It would be great because she knows so much more than I do. But she just won't do it. But I'm telling you, it was abominable. And now you have the added feature of Silicon Valley making a turn far right.
Oh, you can call it far right. They joined Trump. They joined Trump.
Yeah, $45 million a month.
Money is flowing to political power. That's just kind of how the empire runs. And so the wealthy elites see what's going on and they see who's going to be the political. So they're influencing that.
But not out of a void. They're doing it because the Biden people had attempted to break up some of these things as monopolies. It was an antitrust thing, just like Teddy Roosevelt did. And they don't want any antitrust and regulations. They just want to completely deregulate. That goes back to the 2025 project. What I should have mentioned to Ian last time is, they want to get rid of the FBI. They want to privatize the FBI. They want to come up with corporations that are doing what the FBI is doing now. And you think that's going to turn out well? Let me tell you. You think that's going to turn out well? No, it's not going to turn out well.
But you can appreciate how, from a macro perspective, you're describing one faction and one narrative and one, it's really a manufactured clique, right? It's a manufactured narrative among many, all designed to confuse and manipulate the masses. And so if you're a liberal, you identify with everything you were saying and you agree with everything you were saying. But if you're a conservative, you don't. And if you're a conservative, you have your own gripes, your own complaints, and your own understanding and your own idea of who the villains are and who the good guys are. And so in your narrative, Carlo, Biden, of course, is the good guy.
Not a narrative.
Guys, maybe let's not get lost.
There's a reality here.
Let's not get lost in the weeds.
You guys got to get back to reality.
I think
maybe let's not get
privatizing the FBI sounds horrific, right? But portraying the Biden administration as righteous trustbusters, that's a first for me. So that is ridiculous because choosing Biden again is certain death for most of the world, which I think is a big case.
It is the case. The woman they have in charge of antitrust has initiated all of these programs. They're there. It's a reality. It's an attempt
I guess
reality.
I have a bridge to sell you then.
It's probably going to fail.
What's most important to me about the U.S. election is, again, foreign policy. And if you have a Trump administration by November, that's the end of the world guaranteed. If you have a Trump administration, maybe there's a little hair's chance that that's not the case. I mean, that's it. That's why I didn't want a title to reflect
stuff. I'm not talking Nostradamus. I'm talking what's actually on the table. Okay.
Yes, so am I.
I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know what's going to happen.
We are talking about what's on the table now, and Ben is correct that the main contradiction, the primary contradiction that animates all of the conflict is foreign policy. It is international imperialism. It is international domination of the U.S. hegemon creates all of the contradictions at home as well in the imperial core. All of the refugees, obviously, are a result of U.S. engineered wars in the Middle East, right? And that puts strain on the economy and provides a scapegoat for people to blame. But I mean, it's quite clear. Is it the refugees? Are the refugees the problem, or are the refugees escaping U.S. engineered wars the problem, or is it the U.S. engineered wars? So yeah, so I think primary contradiction, imperialism and capitalism, and then secondary is I would say domestic policy.
Yeah.
And
Also,
there's a battle. There's a narrative battle. There's information warfare that takes place designed to manipulate people's perceptions and to get them to, to obfuscate the reality, the obvious reality that Leo just kind of laid out. And so, the idea is confuse people, get them to think in different kinds of terms and different kinds of ways that are unrelated to that reality. And then, and then make them divisive, like throw out a bunch of narratives that contradict each other, and then let those people fight it out amongst themselves. And that's how they, can divide and conquer.
And in terms of foreign policy, did you guys review the Trump interview with One Magazine?
The Bloomberg, I think, and I think the one thing that stood out to me is, well, his language is simple, understandable to the people of the street. It's very approachable, accessible. But the one thing was Taiwan, which I really like, that he's a transactional guy. I don't know if he'll get to do everything that he wants, but you read probably that they should pay more for US protection because we don't get anything out of it, is his thing. Like all the advanced chips, like most of them are made there, we don't get anything out of it. And if that were his approach to most of the world, holy shit, that's why it scared the NATO puppets here in the EU to death that he picked J.D. Vance, because it's basically the same, this America first, revert. Now, just a layer of economic, I would be very glad if that were possible in a US, in a world where US retreats, all the tentacles go back and focus on what's at home. But I don't think it's possible. I mean, if you put the economic aspect to, for example, the migrant crisis, and we can call it that, is all of the basic grudging labor, low cost labor in the US that has to be done by someone, and most of the United States people won't do it. A lot of the economy, the agricultural sector, it's exactly the same in Europe. It's undercutting
on
local wages. So just imagine, like in 5 years, the US reindustrializes and these high value added, creating jet engines and everything, all that. Do you think the US average worker is ready for that? Do you think the empire is
not
ready?
I mean,
but do you think the empire?
Possible? Of course, everything is possible. If some fundamental systemic changes take place. I mean,
yeah, but I don't think that will come from the duopoly.
Jobs if they had enough benefits, if they were paid well enough. I mean, the people who take our garbage here in Berlin, there's still a tiny little bit of vestigial, like socialist or social democratic policies left. They're paid quite well. The people who take our rubbish. I just learned the other day that they get paid like something like 80,000 a year or something.
Yeah, Robert, you're right. I'm not sure he can. It does sound good on the campaign trail. I wish it were true, but yeah.
Ben is not talking to voices in his head. Ben was responding to this comment. So.
Sorry about that. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, he's up against a massive blob, a very powerful blob. I don't know, but
And regarding this, there's a fundamental question: how much does it actually mean anything? What these talking heads, what politicians say? Versus the system, the ecosystem that they run in. This is an ongoing debate among me and my comrades. Some people are of the opinion that everything is deep state and everything is predetermined and everything.
Yeah, I don't think
that it's all theater. That it's all theater. That whatever Trump says, whatever J.D. Vance says, which was interesting. I just saw a clip of J.D. Vance saying that, quote, China helps the poor people. They build roads for poor countries, and the United States should approach China with respect and friendship and cooperation. This is J.D. Vance. I don't remember how long ago. I don't know how long, a few months ago. But
yeah, I saw that quote too.
Yeah, so it's an ongoing question of how much is theater. Is it 100% theater, or is it not? I don't think it is. I think there are
Trump is Hitler.
Exceptions. There are decisions made by politicians which deviate. I mean, we have examples that deviate from what the deep state agenda seems to be.
Trump
it
is
wouldn't have
Hitler.
sent. Sorry,
That's what DJ Vance said about Trump. He's
DJ.
Hitler. A few months ago.
Before he turned pro-Trump.
This guy's a fraud.
He wasn't ever Trumper. Yeah.
Says. His memoir's a work of fiction. The guy gets money from Peter Thiel and has gotten money from Peter Thiel since he was a student at Yale.
Yeah,
that's how long it's been.
Yeah. He's okay. You can
he's
say
he's a fucking whore.
You can say he's an insider whore. I'm with you completely. But it wouldn't have sent shivers down the spine of every fucking these European comprador leaders if it were just for show. Or maybe there's something they don't know.
They're not scared.
They're completely scared about.
I know the truth about DJ Vance. They know the truth about. I mean,
it's
DJ Vance.
Still DJ, but I like DJ. So they wouldn't have said, we're going to be alone. Europe's not going to be funded. Ukraine's not going to be funded. Holy shit, we're on our own and America is unreliable.
They know that's not going to happen.
That's most of the headlines this week.
That's not going to happen. The military-industrial complex here would never let that happen in a million years.
You just lost in Ukraine. Valley. You're about to lose in Israel.
Thiel
and you're
has
saying
Palantir. Thiel is the CEO of Palantir. He's not going to let that happen.
Yeah,
DJ Vance is in his pocket. He owns them for the rest of his life.
Well, I think Trump's election would really represent the end of the Ukraine project.
Here.
I mean, exactly how it plays out, play out, I am not certain. But definitely Trump threatens everything that Biden and the West has been trying to do in Ukraine for the past several years, since really the coup in 2014 on the Maidan. So I think and again, maybe there's a consensus within the Western imperialist power structure that there are no options, and so they're happy to hand it over to Trump and let Trump take all the blame for ending that project. But for whatever reason, I don't see Biden or Kamala ending it like Trump would. But again, I mean, let's just see how it plays out. There's a high likelihood, according to many rumongering headlines, that this weekend Biden will actually step down, and this will consolidate my victory over Ian in this argument about whether or not Biden will be on the top of the ballot. Because once Biden had that awful debate performance, we see that. The entire narrative in the West changed, and everybody was Biden can't do it. He needs to go. And it just seemed obvious that it was just a matter of time. So this weekend could be that time, but we'll see. If I'm wrong, I'm going to be shocked that if Biden ends up being on the ballot.
There's also there's the perspective that all of this most of it is campaign bravado. All this talk of war, with justification for the spending, the military industrial complex spending, the Raytheon spending, the lobbies, and as well as the Israel lobby. So of course all of these politicians in Europe have their own careers to think about. So they are interested in kicking the can down the road and not have a embarrassment on their watch. And so there's this perspective, which is a hopeful one, that most of it is empty bravado. This talk of this NATO expansion into Asia and escalating in Eastern Europe. So that's the hopeful thing, that realistically, like in terms of logistics, in terms of actual weapons and actual capacity, right? It really seems like not much is possible from the US, from the NATO camp, to actually wage a war against Russia or China.
I mean, the MIC is dependent on chips and processors from China. So and there's no manufacturing. There's no big industrial manufacturing.
Yeah, and a lot of the rare earths, used in radar systems and all that, really, really dependent. And I just want to share something with you, because we had this, it's a creation of France, not of Europe, but the EPC, European Political Community meeting in I think Blenheim, it sounds like a German castle somewhere in the UK. And this was their family photo. And they put Orban, my PM, right here on the side on the right. And that's little Zelensky in the middle, who immediately insulted him because he's completely terrified. All of these people are terrified right now because do you know what? Oh, by the way, a small feature. This is Aliyev, of Azerbaijan. And the furthest away from him on the right, this is Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia, who's like a completely west-wedded creature. So something might be coming in the Caucasus. But Ian's with us. I just wanted to... oh shit, where did I want to go with this? Sorry about this. Yeah, the latest demand from the Mr. I just can't get enough of anything, the Green Goblin in the t-shirt. He said he needs 25 complete Patriot battery systems to cover Ukraine. Now that's either 4 or 8 launcher batteries. So it's between 1,000 and 2,000 launcher batteries. Now imagine the interceptors for that. It just doesn't exist in the world. Apparently, a single Russian mass strike can destroy the number of interceptors that the US makes in a year. So that's what you're talking. Yeah, logistically, there's nothing these Muppets they can do without a huge US intervention. And the same is happening in West Asia. If you don't want to skip, then I don't want to transition to another story, then I'll just stop there because important things are happening in Israel too.
Is Zelensky talking about systems or like individual
he said systems.
Platforms? So
he
the
said
whole
systems, 25
systems. Like
systems.
6 or 8 launchers or whatever the number is. He's talking about that.
Yeah, 25 of entire systems. That's just, I don't think that exists if everyone gave up all their Los Patriotas.
Yeah, that's like all of the world's patriots for Ukraine alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Before we transition to another story, right at this place in Blenheim, let me just show you 2 short clips. One's 30 seconds, the other's a little longer, but I think interesting in the state of mind of this guy. One, I think I put audio on. Can you hear it?
We all have our limits. We're all human. Could you reach the point where you couldn't go on as president?
Not even going to preface that.
Yes, I think yes. Everybody, because we're just people.
You could reach the point where you'd have to hand over to someone else.
Yes, of course.
In the next year, the next few years, or
after the war.
So you keep going until the war is
now
listen.
Finish with it. We have to finish with it, and we have to finish with him. I think it's very important for our people, our country.
Finish with Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Okay, that's the state of mind he's in. An unwinnable war, but he will finish when he finishes Vladimir Putin. And I wonder who's the handler. He always keeps looking up when he's in these interviews. Number one, and of course, he also had to talk about the other guy, which is Donald Trump. I don't know if... let's just have a quick listen and then open it up.
What are we listening to?
Can you hear? This is...
No.
Oh, this might be a little bit... Oh, sorry. Second part of that, a little bit more quiet, sorry.
Said last year that
they asked about Trump.
This war could end within 24 hours if he was to meet both you and Vladimir Putin. What do you make of that?
So everybody will be happy if one person in the world doesn't depend. Donald Trump or not. Okay, Donald Trump. If one person in the world, and this person, Donald Trump, can stop the war during 24 hours. The question is, what the price and who will pay? So
do you think you would pay?
I think in his, I'm not meaning that his idea to push us to pay. But if he wants to do it during 24 hours, the simple way is to push us to pay. Because it's understandable how. It means just stop and give. And forget. Sanctions out, everything out. Putin will take the land. Putin will make a victory for his society. We will never go on this. Never. And there is no any guy in the world who can push us to do it.
No one can push him, apparently. Not even the mighty US, not even Donald Trump. End of snippets.
What do you
Yeah.
think, Leo? How
It's
Empty
bad, guys.
bravado.
It's bad.
Empty pump.
You know it's bad.
I mean, what the guy says like doesn't even matter. I mean, it's it's just bluster. It's just hot air. No, I mean it's pretty obvious. I mean, this entire project has been directed, engineered, designed, and funded and supported and sustained by the U.S. and by
Around 50 nations, NATO and non-NATO.
Yeah. So what he's saying here is just for the libtards to sorry for ableism, for the libs to gobble up and like
I don't think it's even ableism at this point to point out that. I mean, I'm definitely against punching down, but I mean, I think it is actually just a correct statement to say there's a cognitive disability in some of our ruling class. I mean, we have. It's I mean, saying something. I mean, at this point, I mean, I do agree. You know, belittling people is bad, and I resist this urge in myself. But you know, I think there is a serious problem. I'm sorry for taking that on a tangent, but there is when you have a ruling class that just completely abandons the principles of meritocracy. You can say, I think it's actually okay and actually important to say, you know, there's something wrong upstairs.
Well, it's not about cognitive abilities or neurological. Well, except for maybe in the case of Joe Biden, but it's more this systemic, you know, structure, the structure of imperialism, the structure of capitalism.
So the only way you can interpret these people to be cognitively deficient is if you're not appreciating the fact that they are of a different class who is not going to be hurt and harmed by their rhetoric, right? So their rhetoric is calculated to benefit themselves. And so in that way, it's rational for them to say what they're saying and do what they're doing. Like as a liberal, it's irrational. And, you know, Mearsheimer and Scott Ritter and all these liberals are always, you know, in disbelief that Germany suicided itself. Why would the government of Germany go along with this? It's suicidal
because it's a colony.
They can't imagine that this government isn't representative of the people. But that's imperialism. That's capitalism. The government represents the capitalists, represents the global capitalist class, and it's headquartered in Washington, D.C., and these are vassals. So it makes total sense that Germany, the government, is going to sell its people out to benefit Western imperialism. And this is the obvious truth that liberals can't grasp because of their ideology. And, you know, but on the other hand, liberalism is a lie. And, you know, I mean, even though Mearsheimer might be a true believer in liberalism, a lot of people understand the Marxist reality, right? They understand that we have an empire of the elites, and we do not want to allow democracy to flourish. And this is how they actually think. This is like the Soroses of the world actually understand how the world works through a Marxist lens. And then they proliferate this fake ideology to convince people that, you know, and to confuse people really into this liberal paradigm. But
by the way, amongst themselves, they don't shy away from the word class. You can always see it in the Financial Times, in Bloomberg. I think Trump was described as a class traitor at some point, the 2016 years. So they talk about class. It's just we are not supposed to.
Well, look, I mean, I think that's a true point on Germany, that they have a captive, what I would call, actually not even just me, just in general, is a captive ruling class that is serving the interests of other states, like Ursula von Hitler.
Jesus, re-elected. She's about to defend Taiwan against China now. Just so
if you look at, like, I want to bring up the example. I mean, I almost hesitate to bring up this example because there's so many liberals who just foam at the mouth about him all day. But look at Elon Musk. I mean, he tweets like, oh, we should understand Russia's perspective and all this crap, blah, 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 on Twitter all day. But at the same time, his Starlink is funded by the DOD to support Ukraine. And Ukrainians constantly shit on him, constantly. I mean, if I were Elon Musk, I would just be like, you know what? If you're going to shit on me all day, I'm just going to not help you.
I'm switch it off, but he can't.
Right, but it's just like what I think Elon Musk, and not just him, because I'm not fixated on Elon Musk like a lot of people are. But I think there's a lot of people like Elon Musk who are just stupid, and if they were born middle class or blue collar, they would just be nobodies because they're too stupid to function in normal society. But because they were
Daddy
born,
was an apartheid South African emerald.
yes,
miner,
because he was born in a wealthy family with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's the he's the first or second richest person in the world, and
the majority of his followers think he's basically Iron Man, Tony Stark.
Yes,
they're convinced.
No matter, I mean, it's like Apple. It's even worse than the Apple fanboys, Elon Musk fanboys. Just like it's amazing how they worship him.
But he did contribute $130 million to Trump's campaign, so he is gravitating towards power. He's trying to maximize his influence in this, and to me, that's telling. And so, the idea that we could very well have another 4 years of Trump is quite plausible. And again, who's going to be on the Democratic ballot is very much up for debate. But
so is most of Silicon Valley, except for Zuckerberg's Meta. I think he took it on the chin. What's the opposite? He got hurt when Trump mentioned in that Bloomberg interview that TikTok shouldn't be banned. It's a good competitor to Meta. So I think he grasped that Meta having a monopoly on social media is not that good for him. So that's the one exception to that.
But
let me back up. Let me back up a little bit to what Zelensky said. I mean, what do you expect him to say? That's number one. I mean, he had to say what he had to say because that's his negotiating position. That's his right now.
Yeah.
That's his negotiating position. The second thing is he knows more than we do about the machinations that are going on. So we're just speculative. We're in areas where he's not speculating. I can't imagine what they are. I can't fathom what they are.
Yeah, but he had 4 years in the machine, so he knows the inside.
But it's just to go back to J.D. Vance. It's just like J.D. Vance. I mean, a few months ago, he was calling Trump a Hitler, another Hitler. But he gets his money from Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has shifted. He hated Trump and was against Trump. Now he's shifted because Trump is big on deregulation, and that's something you can do by executive order. It's handy. He wants to get rid of all of green, all this green stuff, whether it's nonsense or real. China's making it real. Why can't there's
different from Western green
a real dimension to greening things because the Chinese are doing it pretty fucking well.
By the way, Nikki Nimrata Haley was the other one who is now completely
right.
embraced
Yeah,
Trump.
right. Exactly. There's a bunch of turncoats. I mean, because they're politicians. They're not. They never operate at the public level with truth. That's not the game. And the game is played behind the scenes, and we don't know about it, or we know about it belatedly. Like when Thiel starts to support Trump, and the man that Thiel made. I mean, Vance would be nothing without Thiel, nothing. And so now he's turned, and he's going. A man he was calling Hitler a few months ago, he's backing him. Now, does that make Vance a Nazi? Is Trump a Nazi? No, it's all rhetoric.
I want to point out some parallels between the rise of Barack Obama and the rise of J.D. Vance. And I made a joking prediction, a couple weeks ago about J.D. Vance being the president before 2026, which is possible. I mean, it's a long shot prediction. But Barack Obama just came out of nowhere and he suddenly was the president for 8 years. And J.D. Vance kind of fits the same profile. Like he's a nobody. He went to Silicon Valley, made a fortune. And then all of a sudden he's, the champion of the white, citizenry that's been left behind by, deindustrialization, et cetera, Appalachia.
Wasn't that amazing that they had the Teamsters union boss there speaking pretty good class language at the RNC? not the DNC.
So I
thought
don't trust him, but it's still possible that the policy, that he's going to pursue, the policies that he's going to pursue are going to be an improvement over what we've had under Biden. And so, I think he's totally controlled, and he's an asset, an agent of, a ruling class consensus, or at least a strong faction within the ruling class. But they might have some better ideas about how to move the empire forward. And of course, any rational person is going to understand that the empire is going to have to manage its own decline. And so that's what they really need to focus on doing, is managing this decline, because there's no other option for them. They don't have the option of, global war and maintaining their empire. That's not an option. So they've got to figure out how to manage it, and maybe JD Vance can help do that in a way that's not going to push us to nuclear war or World War III. But I wanted to make the point.
Thinking, and it's like Rosalie just pointed out to me. If all that's true, why didn't Trump do it the first time? But the other thing is
it's the development of a consensus. It takes time.
JD Vance was counsel to Peter Thiel's companies. That's how he made his money. He didn't make his money in Silicon Valley.
He was talent. He was identified as talent, kind of like Zelensky was identified as talent by Kolomoisky. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good.
But
analogy.
there's a tension within the ruling class, right? And you have it's a lot of it is anarchism. You have the individual self-interest of multiple billionaires, multiple industries, multiple factions, and they have to somehow come together and consolidate on a consensus to move forward and to benefit their collective interest as a class. But there's a tension between the self-interested people like Trump and those who are understanding that as a class, they have a responsibility to not be suicidal and not do things that are detrimental to the overall system. That, of course, is threatened by democracy. It's threatened by the collective interests of the working class. So for instance, they have to force these self-interested billionaires that want to do business in China, because China is such a great market, and it's a great place for Western corporations to make a profit. They have to disincentivize people from wanting to do that. And so how all that plays out and how all that develops into a policy of empire is their challenge. And that's what we're seeing play out. They're trying to figure out an approach going forward on how to manage either. Some people want to be hawkish. They want to push a war with China, push a war with Russia. But other people are realizing, that's a dead end. That's not going to serve their interests. That's not an option. And so this is playing out behind the scenes, like Carlos said, and we're not seeing it. Is anything I'm saying worthwhile? Because I can shut up.
I think it is worthwhile. Do you want to go, Leo? I had some comments.
No, go for it.
Okay. I just wanted to welcome the Flame of Liberation in chat, and John Daly, who apparently got here via algorithm, which is rare for us. Welcome. And I wanted to say that there's these neocon idiots who are very much, again, behind Biden, unlimited war. Let's go into Taiwan. Let's attack Russia directly. Let's just bomb Iran, which right now is also the Republican part. So never mind that. But let's not forget that this whole thing is overstretched. I think even Jerome Powell said, we cannot do any more fucking depth. We're in the shitter. And there was this article that the Eisenhower came home from Yemen, they experienced the worst, most intense fighting since World War II. And they were traumatized somewhat because they were not used to getting shot at. And just today, this morning, I read that apparently there was two, but I only really know the details about the first one. Yemen, who stopped the US in its tracks, sent this drone to somewhere in Tel Aviv. This attack, not directly at the embassy, but very near the US embassy in Jaffa, otherwise known as Tel Aviv, which had to travel 2,000 kilometers above the US, the British, the French Navy, the Saudi, and avoid the air defenses that Israel has. And it went all through that and hit its target. I think one person died. And this has already sent shivers down the Hebrew side, not yet the English side of, Israeli media, seeing our deterrence is fucked. We're done. And at the same time, they're really hell bent on going north and just initiating a war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. You know, this thing, it seems they've decided, or Netanyahu decided, we're going to collapse at the same time as Ukraine has. Now, what does someone in the Pentagon, someone in, you know, we need to keep Raytheon and all that, what do those guys think about all this? What if we are shown to be what Mao called us, you know, the paper tiger? I think there's real concern behind the JD Vance push of, let's just bring the tentacles back. Let's leave this to the Europeans. Let's leave this alone and all that. I think painting, I really love George Galloway and Two Cheeks of the Same Arse, but painting the ruling classes as monolithic, having just one will and one grand design is false. Industrial capital is never on the same page as financial capital. It just never is the same. And this is what people, I think, should focus on. End of.
So what's inevitably going to happen is after the election, you know, the power structures are going to be entrenched, and there's going to be a policy that's pursued, and then their opposition within the ruling class is going to try and oppose them, right? And that's just how we see it play out every 4 years. Is you know, after the election is when that's the only time we can be certain of what the policy direction is going to be, and then we see the opposition to that policy. Sometimes there's agreement. Sometimes the opposition is all on board with, you know, the direction that the whatever faction or coalition of factions ends up taking power after the election. But I don't think we know. So it's possible that, you know, what they're going to do is double down in, it's not the Middle East. What is it called? It's called West Asia, right? So it could be
it's properly called West Asia.
And JD Vance are going to give up on the Ukraine project and focus on the Iran project. That's a possibility. Or maybe even the China project. So we don't know. It would be nice if they just gave up all of the imperial projects, right? And, you know, made a decision to end the 800 military bases around the world and just pull back U.S. imperialism and, you know, just you know, coexistence with the rest of the world, multipolarism. But that's what needs to happen. But I don't think that's going to happen. But we won't really know for sure where they're at with their policies until after the election and they start doing whatever they're going to do. I mean, there's going to be signs, though, of what they're going to do. What do you guys think? Do you think they're going to go after Iran? Do you think they're going to push the China issue with Taiwan? It's
my thinking is the crisis is so huge and deep in image, legitimacy, and also economics. Is they're going to try to do what they usually do, is lose, but paint it as a win. This can be applied to Ukraine. I don't know if they can actually lose Israel, but I don't see a way of saving it at this point. You know,
and there could be an event. There could be a big event that's going to change the dynamics, right? It could be a big war with Israel and Hezbollah. It could be I don't know. It could be something but it could be a global economic collapse as well.
Yeah, based on the sanctions trajectory, you know, sanctioning everything from China, that's a big possibility. So yeah, it's very unpredictable waters what they're going to do. They're absolutely in a corner. Or I'm open to what you guys speculate, but
I mean, China can afford to cut off the U.S., but the U.S. cannot afford to cut off China.
That's true. About 20% of their exports went to the U.S. in 2022 before the thing.
The economic dependence and also subordination under, you know, the awesome manufacturing capacity of China. You know, I mean, in terms of like realistic capacity is concerned, it's really, I mean, obviously it's very complex. I'm not sure if I have the entire picture, but it really looks like the capacity is not there to escalate and to start new conflicts. It just really seems, but then, you know, it's the systemic momentum inertia of the DoD of the military industrial complex, and also the logic of capital, the logic of imperialism, right? It cannot reverse. It's not possible to rethink the entire system until total collapse. Or best case scenario, all of the fronts, the Ansar Allah has proven that the might of Israel, the most advanced army in the world,
Backed up by the US.
backed up by the U.S., cannot push forward, cannot defeat Ansar Allah, and economically they're hurting a lot, as well as European interests and U.S. American interests are hurt a lot by Ansar Allah, but they cannot solve that very simple, seemingly simple problem, right? So it's I think in the minds of people like Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, it's about on all the fronts managing and sort of as time progresses, that these warmongers will be forced to shut up and sit down. I think that is the strategy, because they know the systemic contradictions cannot disappear. It's just a matter of maintaining kind of the status quo, the way things have been going, and without escalation and without opening up new fronts.
No, Leo, I totally agree with that, and I have said very, very similar things repeatedly. They're managing the decline. They do not want to escalate. They understand that they're winning the long game, and it's up to the U.S. to do something. But anything the U.S. does, any real attempt, any provocative attempt, will just accelerate the demise, and China and Russia will counter it, and that's why. And so yeah, just shut up and sit down. You guys are no longer the hegemon, and don't worry, we'll deal with you however you behave. But ultimately, we're progressing away from the unilateralism to multipolarism. Carlo,
this big war stuff is only part of the picture, because you have to consider global low economic warfare. And that is, like, for example, what's happening between Niger and Benin right now. Niger had a contract to use the Chinese pipeline that Belt and Road Initiative built through Niger to Benin. Mm-hmm. And now the Chinese have been cut off from that oil by Benin because of an internal conflict, supposedly with Niger. Now, that's prompted by the U.S. That's a CIA op, and so China is counting on that oil. They built the pipeline, but I think it's been reopened. I'm not quite sure about that, but for a period of time, they were shut off from that oil. Now, take that and multiply it by 10,000, and that's the kind of low economic warfare that the United States is waging all around the world right now. And if you look closely, you can see it. And they've always done that. That's it's something that's beyond the control of Trump when he gets elected. Vance will have no say in any of that.
That's true. That's the intelligence community, as it's called.
Yeah, that's the intelligence community. So that's I think what they're going to step up. If I can't imagine any more disasters they can do. I mean, especially to Africa. I mean, that you have South Sudan, you have Sudan. Libya,
unfortunately, Nigeria
was Nigeria. Oh, it's
so
awful.
This is definitely one of the advantages that the empire has over the the multipolarists and the people that want sovereignty. All they have to do is destroy, and destruction is very much easier than building and creation. And so
sabotage.
That's it. That's they just have to harm what other people are trying to build, and that benefits their interests. From their perspective, from their approach, from their view as the current ruling class in the West. Like, if they just destroy what others are building, then that's helping themselves. And so that's one of the diabolical things that people need to understand and appreciate about the West, and it's why why we need anti-imperialism.
Go
ahead, Leo.
Sorry, they can sabotage and all of this, but earlier I laid out a kind of a hopeful, optimistic scenario, and but we should consider also the Marxist economic long-term perspective of the declining rate of profit, which the people at the reins of power for sure understand. Every 100 years or so, they need a major war in the world to reset the profit margins, to reset the entire capitalist systemic
Right.
system, right?
But let's
So
not forget.
from that perspective, a war is absolutely necessary to these people.
Yeah,
Okay,
to
let's not
save the system. I mean, they painted themselves into a corner that's their only recourse.
But there was a
Perhaps.
very forceful remark. Sergei Lavrov and Zakharova, they were both in New York at the UN, I think 2 days ago. And they said the US calculating that if there's an escalation, a huge war in Europe, that it's not going to harm the US. They are badly mistaken. That you can stay out of this one like you did the last one. You know, they already said if we burn, basically you burn. You know, kind of paraphrasing. So what they need is the world to burn, but for them to stay out of it and stay intact and come up the top dog. And I don't think they can risk the opposite. When it comes to these low-level conflicts, Carlo, you said you don't know if the pipeline thing is resolved between Benin and Niger, but maybe it is.
Actually, the Chinese have the legal authority.
What I wanted to say is Niger is not alone, not anymore. And the same applies to, Hungary, Slovakia. We just had our own oil supply cut off by Ukraine, by the way. And, my foreign minister flew and talked to Lavrov and said, yes, we at Gazprom, and we're going to solve this thing. No, don't you worry about it 1 second. Don't you worry your crying eyes. No worries. Exactly the same. What I'm wanting to say is there's diminishing success, even in color revolutions. I know Samantha Power just said, I'm here in Armenia. Isn't it a beautiful place? Well, I don't think it didn't work in Belarus. It didn't even work in Hungary with the latest attempt. It really is. It didn't work in Georgia.
Right, exactly. My phrase should have been low intensity economic warfare.
True, but the playbook has been so overused, other than sabotage. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. Yeah. So,
on that point, China builds, Russia is now building, and the West destroys. This came out, I think, yesterday by John Helmer at Dances with Bears. I think it's an interesting thing that the sanctions, and this is not in the title, but it's part of the article, that Russia is undergoing this logistics cargo revolution faster than any time in history because it's the orientation from west to east and from north to south. And it also against the will of the previously entrenched oligarch class, which is very important. They always wanted this nice Western gravy trade to continue forever. It might be an interesting read. And the big news is the International North-South Trading Corridor, something like that. Russia and Iran are laying down the first pipes underneath the Caspian Sea, between them two, So that is already happening. They're not just planning and designing something on the table 5 years from now. The multinodal system may be in its infancy, but it's mostly already here. I mean, if you look at the SCO summit in Astana, Belarus joined. Next up, Kazan, maybe 2 months from now, which is the day after tomorrow in historical terms, which is the BRICS one. All of this is already here to challenge.
Yeah, all of this is already here, and we see maybe the beginning of a real pivot to the east by India, which is hugely significant, right? I think it's accurate. Someone said that Turkey and India, which direction they pivot, will decide whether empire has another year or 3 or 5 to maintain hegemony. So India's, India did not need to meet with Putin.
The first flight after election.
Yeah, absolutely. Did not need to, because they were going to meet at the upcoming, I think, ICO conference. So this is a huge message to the West. The Indian foreign minister of external affairs said our friendship with Russia is eternal. Basically, is eternal. It's not going to change at all.
The same happened to Iran's new president, and there was a lot of Western hopes on this reformist. Nope.
Yeah. And so all of these things are, yeah, if we zoom out, all of these things are just really, really closing in on making the capacity to create further chaos, like, really not possible, diminishing the possibilities.
Yeah, a
of
tremendous
major
cause for
disruptions.
optimism. Absolutely tremendous cause for optimism on all these fronts, especially how Prosperity Guardian. Remember that plan by the West to secure the shipping lanes? I mean, what a colossal failure. Remember the rhetoric going into Prosperity Guardian? We will liberate the shipping lanes. We will ensure free trade. And man,
There was a meme.
A year now.
There was a meme with the huge US fleet saying the Houthis fucked around and they're about to find out. Well,
yeah, and now Yemen is joining BRICS.
Yes, they are the high consideration.
Well,
for
they're
BRICS.
way up on the list.
Way.
So I mean, the cause for optimism when we critically scrutinize all these different areas and flashpoints around the world are absolutely overwhelming. And we oftentimes get lost in the minutia, and we don't correctly perceive the forest because of these individual trees. So no, that's a great point, and we really need to reflect on how difficult it is and how no options are left really for the Western imperialists. But are they going to do something crazy? Are they going to escalate? Are they going to say that, yeah, this system is at its end. The only thing that we can do is a reset, which means, global war, or at least a large regional war, to reset things. But, these are, we don't know. All we can do is speculate.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we look at history, there are examples from both sides of the argument, right? There are examples, for example, economic dependency or economic relationships has never curtailed war. For example, between the US and Britain, right? There was a lot of trade, obviously. There was a lot of dependency. There was a lot of even, culturally connection, but that did not deter the War of Independence from the US. But there are some examples like that, many. But then there's also other examples. For example, the US did plan to nuke Russia and China in the 1950s, right? It was actually absolutely in the plans, in the
Churchill loved that. Yeah.
But they didn't do it because it didn't make sense. It would have been bad for them. So the Korean War, they fled with their tail behind between their legs, and they did not escalate. They just went back and continued to try to destroy North Korea through sanctions in the next decades. But also, obviously, Afghanistan, they just sort of gave up, right? I mean, people
those
can
images,
say that it was always the plan, that their objective was achieved, destabilized West Asia and blah, blah, blah. But, I don't think so. I don't think that was their plan to withdraw all of a sudden. So there are examples from both sides, I guess.
Not to mention, like, after 20 years of occupation, I mean, a drinking age occupation. After that, they had to fuck off, nation building, as they said in the beginning.
Yeah. And what did they build? Obviously, nothing.
Nope.
No.
While there were 20 years in Iraq, built nothing. No benefit, nothing of benefit to the Iraqi people. Only horror.
Libya has open air slave markets.
Yeah.
Western intervention.
And then they had to steal all of Afghanistan's currency and reserve.
The gold as well.
They stole it. Just stole it.
Yeah. They stole from Libya too. I mean, they stole gold. They had a lot of gold bullion, gold reserves. They stole. They stole Venezuela's gold that was in Egypt, in Britain, and they stole. They're going to steal Russia's, assets.
Yeah, I think Arabia has definitively said if NATO steals the Russian assets, they are going to take the Western assets that's in Saudi Arabia. So that's a huge thing as well. And Syria is pushing to expel all of the U.S. military bases, and sorry to jump around too much, but there's the alliance of the last colonies of France, which was just formed of all the still colonized regions under France, which is forming an alliance. So yeah, the capacity diminishing.
Just so you know, despite the warning from Saudi Arabia and basically all the Arab states that have wealth, it seems that the Europeans didn't pay attention. This is about 3 or 4 hours ago via RT that Euroclear has said, yep, the first batch of the profits have been seized and they will be sent to Ukraine. So they did it. Effects incoming. Friday, mark the date. Breaking. Jesus.
Suicide. It's literal suicide.
I think so.
For the NATO countries. Like no country in the world will take them seriously or can trust them ever again.
Yeah. Bye-bye,
So I
Eurobond.
think there's mixed messages coming out of the ruling class, and I think that explains that there's a debate being held right behind the scenes. They're figuring out a plan, and that's going to coalesce after the elections, after they've determined who the political puppets are going to be and who's going to own the political puppets. That's when we'll have certainty regarding the policy direction that they want to go down. But yeah, they're constrained. There's no good options. There's worse options, and then there's really bad options. So, they're just in a bind, and it's not easy running an empire. When ultimately the purpose of the empire is to benefit the interests of the minority, usually at the expense of the majority, while at the same time pretending that you're a democracy, intent on representing the people's interests. It's just untenable, and ultimately it's going to break down. And how that happens is, what we're watching play out in real time. We are an hour and 7 minutes in. I know, Jeff Brown in Normandy was a guest the other day, and he talked about how France is actually the biggest empire in that they still have colonies in like 14 time zones, which was we don't appreciate that. We don't think about that. We think of Russia having the most time zones as a nation, but definitely the French Empire is also in decline. I was mentioning Jeff Brown because he might join us next week, Friday, and he wants to talk about how Trump actually did plan his own fake assassination. So that should be an interesting discussion. That should be an interesting show. But he is quite persuaded that this is the case. So we're gonna discuss that. I think next Friday is the consensus that we're gonna have him back, and he's got a lot. So I want to hear him out and listen to his thing. But that's next Friday. Anyway, other thoughts. I don't want to rush us off.
I want to just say that Rosalie reminded me something else that the deregulation, the regulators in Biden's cabinet, and I can't remember that it's Department of Commerce or whatever, but they also want to highly regulate AI, and they're saying it for the protection of the general population from obviously receiving false information through AI, and that's another crawl in Silicon Valley's neck or mouth. It's sticking in their craw because they're big on AI. It's a big cash cow for them, and so there is that tension, a legitimate tension between the Biden administration and AI. It doesn't listen. I hate that Biden. I despise him, and it doesn't. What I'm saying doesn't ameliorate what that idiot and his people have done in Ukraine and in Gaza, in Israel. But to understand why Trump is coming on so strong, I think it's important to understand what this nest of billionaires' interests are, to keep that in mind, and they're just the force they have, the power they have to alter the political landscape. So
And spying on us.
and spying on us.
The Manhattan Project for AI.
Yeah, the Manhattan Project for AI, right?
Can you just scoot over, Carlo, and let her talk?
Yeah, just scooch over.
Yeah, right.
Let's have you both on screen.
No, I'm her mouthpiece, man.
Sorry.
All right, I just wanted to.
Everybody like her has to have a mouthpiece.
Yeah,
Microsoft. There was that funny thing about Samsung, a corporatocracy in South Korea, using their sleeper agent within the CIA to spy on the U.S. And of course, it's always their own allies and friends who are doing the espionage and spying, and not the spy balloons from their enemies. But anyway, you know what Carlo, you know, like, keeps on saying, like, this leads us to like another very important question: what is the role of these right-wing populists who are who seem to be going against what the deep state wants internationally, right? I mean, these people are obviously not our friends. I don't think Orban is our friend ultimately.
No.
He's an anti-communist. He's a, you know,
and he's my prime minister. I wouldn't call him a fucking friend or an ally.
Yeah. Modi,
but I can be glad.
AfD and Le Pen and all these people, they have fantasies of national rejuvenation, and they want to be the hegemon, at least in the local sphere. But they do play a temporary, tactical, progressive role in causing at least a rift, at least causing conflict within the imperialist establishment within the West.
I feel the same way about Trump. I couldn't be happier that Orban is the prime minister, even though he's basically a class enemy of mine. Right now, looking at the opposition figures, we would be in Ursula hell if were it not for him.
Absolutely,
you know? I feel
worse.
the same with Trump. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, what Orban did in the last couple of weeks absolutely is commendable. We should applaud. I mean, he's showing with these other EU bureaucrats to be absolute clowns, to be absolute slave clowns.
Do you know, we have this new Sovereignty Protection Bureau, and it's taken effect on the media. And the media landscape has changed so much that if you ask an average Hungarian at the pub, what is Orban doing with this peace mission? You get the answer is, he's trying to save these stupid Europeans from a fight they can't win. If you ask a stupid German, you'll probably get, oh, he's in Putin's pocket and he's trying to save Putin, right? That's how much we've diverged just by having information sovereignty. So there's a huge, huge difference it can make. Just want to add that anecdote. It's a true one.
It sounds like something similar to what Georgia was doing, right? So Georgia was putting the kibosh on the NGO's ability to, you know, just proliferate the airwaves with false narratives. So that's good. I mean, the information war is perhaps the most important struggle in the struggle against imperialism, in the class war, etc. And you know, it's like the liberals always pretend that there's no such thing as the class war, and it's just democracy. People vote for capitalism, man. Capitalism isn't coercive. It's the socialists that are authoritarian and coercive. And you know, they don't have any concept of the information war and how, you know, it's so effective at, you know, they're really much better at it and more advanced at it. The capitalists are with their, you know, their propaganda and their control over the media sphere. And Putin's acknowledged it, right? Putin says we can't compete. We can't compete with that. All we have is truth. And but truth is powerful in and of itself, and that's an advantage to the West, or to the anti-imperialist bloc. What do you think, Ian? You've been not so opinionated
Ian,
today.
Let me bounce something off you, and then we can get a full rounded answer. But this, on the power of propaganda, this is from the official Azov Instagram translated. They're going on a tour. So apparently there's Polish, German, Dutch, Belgian, and Czech, and of course Lithuanian people who think they're freedom fighters against Russia because they're going to be telling the truth to them. And this was one of the 3rd Division's decorated members going to Auschwitz with a fucking quote of Hitler on his T-shirt. That's how powerful fucking propaganda is, that these are apparently Western Europe's freedom fighters.
Well, you know, it's the reality of it is that whatever I mean, it is like I mean, not to be hysterical here, but it is like Orwell's 1984. Whatever the party says is the truth, and doesn't matter if your own eyes and ears contradict what the party says. So, I mean, they said. I mean, remember when they said the Syrian SDF, the Syrian moderate rebels are, the good guys. They are, I mean, they said all this stuff. It didn't even matter if it made sense or not. These Syrian freedom fighters are leftists. They are LGBT and all this, every, liberal, social, identity politics buzzwords they can think of, they throw in. These people in Western Europe and the USA gobbled up every word of it. So if you say, these Azov battalion and I forget the other famous battalion. I'm drawing a blank on it. The
Kraken.
There was the one that Zelensky pardoned and let out of prison right at the beginning.
Right sector?
No, it was a specific battalion that had a bunch of members. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on it. But anyways, so, you tell these far right Ukrainian guys are actually, these liberal leftist freedom fighters. Of course they believe it. And it's not even a question of if it's true or not. It's just, it's social signaling. It is literally virtue signaling. It's not, so and that's why I've stopped even trying to argue with these people on the internet, because it's not even whether, yes, anti-Soviet war. I mean, it's like that, except
6th of December, 1993, I think I read the Independence cover. Yeah.
Yes. And and I've written blog posts about this before too, that, it didn't start with
like
Democrats.
A Jamal Khashoggi article. Sorry.
It really started with American Republicans. It started, when Republicans complain about woke, everything is woke. Democrats ruined everything, made everything woke. Well, Republicans were woke even before Democrats were woke. I mean, what can be more woke than supporting these Afghan jihadists, these literal jihadists, against another Western nation, because the Soviet Union is right? They never attacked
US targets or Israel.
Yes, it's just it is virtue signaling. Virtue signaling started with Republicans in the Cold War. And all that's happened is Democrats became and I say this over and over again. That's why I don't sympathize, even though I repeatedly attack Biden and Democrats, and I say a lot of extremely negative things about Democrats, that does not by any stretch of the imagination mean I'm giving Republicans and conservatives in the USA a free pass. No, because all this crap started with them in the Cold War. All that happened is starting in the 1990s with Clinton. All that happened was that Clinton extended that olive branch to Wall Street and said, hey, we are willing to be that war hawk, pro-business party.
Yeah.
And it's just all that happened was power shifted to the Democrats, but they didn't invent those tactics. Republicans invented those woke tactics of taking the virtue signaling for these really awful groups of people around the world and pretending they're freedom fighters. That's really how when it comes to the international stage, when it comes to America's foreign policy, that's what I call woke, is saying, this horrible, that objectively this terrible group of people are actually good and we should celebrate them. That started with Republicans. It did. I mean, Leo looks skeptical. I'm sorry, Leo. Maybe you're just thinking, but you have.
No, I absolutely agree with you. It makes me wince a little bit, these very loaded terms, because they really get like people's emotions riled up and sort of turns off their reason, faculties. But I agree with absolutely everything you're saying, and of course another example of these actors that they support, ETIM, the East Turkestan movement, right? Which was a terrorist group, considered a terrorist group by the U.S. until very recently, when it served their interest to take them off of the terrorism list. These contradictions are absolutely astounding, right? According to the liberal narrative, this is fight for independence from the Chinese colonizers, right? Just like the Palestinians are fighting for independence and freedom from settler colonial state of Israel.
Yes, it's a decolonial struggle, they would say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the narrative. This is how they're supposed to think of it. And of course, we have a barrage of tweets and of official statements from ETIM on their total support for Israel. Right? I mean, they're Muslims. You think that they would absolutely, of course, the fight for independence and self-determination. Of course, they're on the side of the Palestinians, right?
They probably have a lot of backing, funding, and support from Zionists, though. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the recent, like the Euro Cup Turkish team thing, the guy made the Grey Wolves signal, which is banned. And of course, the Grey Wolves absolutely support ETIM. Of course, I mean the Turkish fascists support East Turkestan. Like, and to not mention ISIS and Boko Haram and all those guys, that's all the same camp. It's all supported by the U.S. to destabilize and to further their interests. So like the picture is so clear to us, and it's just a matter of time when a single straw is going to break. It's already breaking the camel's back on the narrative.
Yeah, but at some point in history, I just want to show these side by side.
Germany last.
Yeah. Side by side, because it's just so amazing to me. That was the Osama bin Laden of 1993, and this is the Azov division of 2024. And I think they will, just as that one did, the other one might come back and bite them in the ass. And I want to bring up that it wasn't, weren't the Chechens used in exactly the same way as this?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Russia has proved to be, well, it was a bloody fight, but after that, it proved to be immune to this.
I was just saying this. It took the Mujahideen about 20 years to realize that they had been used. They had been abused and used in the U.S. war against the Soviet Union. And they did 9/11 in revenge. And the Chechens took the Chechens about 20 years after a bloody war,
Yes.
or you can call it an invasion from Russia, to realize that Russia is not their enemy. That it was the USA who used them and abused them to instrumentalize them against Russia. And today, of course, the Chechens are 100% diehard supporters
of
the Russian Federation. The volunteers in the special military operation from the Chechnyas, who are awesome fighters.
Ahmad Special Forces, they laugh on the battlefield as shells are raining down. They're insane and
they're
epic.
They're fucking badasses, but or insane. But it will likely take the Ukrainians about 20 years to realize that they had been instrumentalized, that they were nothing but pawns, used and abused, fed into the meat grinder for U.S. hegemonic interests. So yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I think it'll be a lot sooner than that. I think when the war is over, the Kool-Aid will wear off very quickly. I mean, there's going to be some people that the Kool-Aid just cannot wear off. I mean, there are going to be people like that, and it doesn't matter what you show them to make them think otherwise, but I think that's a minority. I think the majority of people in the territory of Ukraine are going to very quickly see what a scam it was. And it's going to require, I mean, I think a lot of them already think that. Even those polls that show 40%, something like 45% want a peace deal with Russia, even if that means making concessions. Like, even because, there are gradients to that statement, right? Because they talk about 1991 borders, they talk about 2014 borders, and they talk about making further concessions after 2022. So you see more and more people even openly say that they're willing to make concessions, not even go back to 2014 borders, just go back to, accepting that those 4 provinces that voted to join Russia are lost. I mean, and I think that true percentage of
much higher
people in Ukraine is much higher. They just don't want to say it when someone directly knocks on their door and asks them for this, or calls them on the phone and asks them for the survey, but it's probably higher than that. So that, to me, that seems that suggests that once the Kool-Aid is not being pushed, and we can even see this in other countries like Georgia. I mean, look how fast Georgia woke up from the Kool-Aid. And really the biggest step was cutting off that gravy train. Or even Russia, because a lot of the anti-Stalin, the anti-Soviet Union crap that was continually being churned out by Russian companies and Russian media outlets.
And by United Russia, by Putin's party.
Yes, but as soon as they did an about-face and cut off those NGOs, cut off that money, look how quickly that reversed. Even in Russia, all that shit lib ideology that Russian mouthpieces were pushing out. Look how quickly that disappeared overnight. When
now the statues to Ho Chi Minh is going up, and Centers for the Study of Xi Jinping Thought is going up, and very happy to see anti-communist monuments in Lugansk being demolished.
Oh, that was beautiful. Yes,
at this moment, yeah.
I mean, you can't have a self-hating people in times of war. And that's what these NGOs do. They create this debilitated, self-hating population that is incapable of anything.
And what Leo said
has to be noticed.
And what Leo said earlier about those buzzwords and those loaded, I think that is an appropriate term, these loaded terms that rile up people's emotions on both sides of the aisle. That's why it's called a polarizing issue for a reason. And I think that's the same strategy, whether it's within the USA or within Russia or any other country. That's the purpose of these issues, is to rile people up. And so the solution is really just to not even have that discussion. It's like there's no benefits. There's no benefits to these discussions. They're not even meant to have I mean, it's one thing. I mean, it's completely, I'm not saying it's bad to have dialogues about transgressions, historical transgressions. I'm not saying that at all. You know, you should, regardless of what country or nation of people you are, you should have these discussions about slavery, about imperialism, about genocides that have happened in your people's histories. It's completely beneficial. It's actually beneficial to have, and not just censor it and just say, you know, those things never happened. Like Japan does now. Like they whitewashed. They just whitewashed what they did to Koreans, what they did to Chinese. They just whitewash it. And the irony here is that whitewashing happens when Japan itself is a colony. You know, it didn't happen. The whitewashing happened when Japan itself was a colony. You know, it was beneficial for that whitewashing to happen. So I'm not saying whitewashing is a good thing, but when the purpose of the dialogue is just to shame people, it's just a self-hating ritual. I mean, there's no benefit to that for people living now to say, oh, well, you know, my great-great-great-grandfathers did these bad things and I should be ashamed and hate myself. That's not beneficial. And that's the purpose of it. And and I think the purpose of that is at best in some cases, polarization. And in other cases, balkanization. Like they want to balkanize. So, you know, it's just like, oh, you know, propagandize Chinese people so China splits up, or propagandize Russians so that country splits up. If I'm making sense. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, you are. But the phrase will be, you know, freedom to the Chechens, freedom to the different peoples, Yakutia, you know, independent. That's what they're going to phrase it as, yeah. And by the way, we now have a high representative for foreign policy in the EU, who is Kaja Kallas, who said that is what victory looks like over Russia, splitting it up to many small states. So we're on the path to self-destruction very fast.
There's room for optimism, Ben. There is room for optimism.
In the next episodes, we can discuss how the ruling class is fomenting division at home in the same way, causing splits, and also fomenting the rise of fascism, the rise of racist right-wing parties, how the center, the liberal center, is deliberately fomenting the rise of xenophobic, racist, right-wing populism at home. We can touch on that next.
How would they do that? Like with the proliferation of outrageous ultra-leftist questioning
No, I mean with the
biology and things like that.
immigration issue, for example, there are many examples.
Yeah.
But for example, the refugees, especially Ukrainian refugees in Germany, get like massive benefits. Massive. They get an apartment immediately, and they get all the state funding. Like they basically don't have to work. They,
I think Germany plans to cut that and send them back. I think I read maybe last week, right?
Okay.
There was an initiative at least somewhere in the Bundestag.
But that's just one example. I mean, if you look at the liberal establishment is passing these absolutely racist laws against migrants and refugees, making it easier to deport them for minor crimes, and which include calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide.
Wow.
Especially Germany, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're blaming it on focusing the camera on the AfD and calling them fascists and calling them, racist, while they themselves are passing these racist laws. I think these are some of the ways that they are fomenting division at home. I think the ruling elites absolutely want to bring out fascism within the imperial core in the next few years.
So that sounds like a very important discussion, and like you said, it'll take up an entire episode at least. So, but I want to thank all you guys for joining us. I have real life impending on me, and I really have to go. But
good talk, guys.
All right, thanks everybody.
Reconvene on Friday. This is Friday. On Tuesday, episode 98 on Tuesday. Thank you very much. We will see you then.
Have a great